Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Champions of Self Visual Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Eden, and I'm happy to welcome Jamie MoCrazy with us today. She is a professional skier. She's actually done some amazing things with her life, and she and I met through a speaking association that we're with. She was nice enough to spend some time with me over the phone one day. I got to know her a bit, and I'm even more lucky to have her on this podcast today. So, Jamie, hello there, and how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate answering some questions and having some fun.
No problem. Glad to have you here. So, Jamie, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
All right, well, do you want the broad story or the sections of the story?
We'll start with the broad. That's okay.
Okay, so for the broad story is since I was a child, I was really competitive. I grew up on the East Coast of the US, Connecticut and New Hampshire, and I loved competing in gymnastics and soccer and skiing. You know, when you ask kids what they want to be when they grow up and they say, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a movie star. You asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said, I want to be a professional athlete. I had that
Nice.
idea in my mind. And when I was 6 years old, I actually won state championships in gymnastics, and I was
Really?
interviewed and I said, I'm going to combine gymnastics with skiing, my two favorite things. Fast forward a few years and I combined gymnastics with skiing, which is freestyle skiing. So I was competing in slopestyle and half pipe skiing. So slopestyle means you get judged on your overall impression and you have multiple jumps and rails and you spin to the left and to the right and backwards and forwards. And so you get judged on your overall impression. And then in half pipe, it's like half of a tube that you go down and you do tricks on both sides. So that's what I competed in. And so now we're gonna fast forward some periods of life from my childhood to when I was 17 years old. I actually won the first ever world championships in slopestyle skiing, junior world championships in New Zealand. And it was
Wow.
when they were trying to decide if slopestyle skiing would become an Olympic event or not. And the Olympic committee was there and they all interviewed me and I was like, it's so great. And as we know, it became an Olympic event. But so that happened and I made X Games a number of times. And then I actually in 2013 became the first female in the world to compete and land any sort of double flip in a slopestyle run. So that was
Wow.
super exciting at the
Yeah.
2013 X Games. So it looked like my life was just going up and up and up. I was climbing the mountain of life and I just kept going up and up and up. So it was fantastic. I was not at the top, but I was pretty close. I had been ranked first or second overall in the world for a couple of years and it all seemed to be going really great. And then we're going to transport to a pretty critical time. And so this is an intense story. I want you to imagine it. You are at World Tour Finals with my sister. My sister's 19. She's super excited. It's her first ever World Tour Finals. She's there to compete in the half pipe skiing, which is the next day. But that day, she's just supporting her sister, me, in the slopestyle competition. And after the first run, she knows I'm sitting in fourth place. And you know, if you have those family members or friends or colleagues who are just obnoxiously always super competitive, everyone knows those people. I am that person who always has to be the best and be right and like just really competitive. So she knows that. So she knows that I'm going to upgrade and I am going to upgrade. I'm going to change my off-axis backflip to an off-axis double backflip for the second run. And so she
Mm.
gives me a hug at the top because she's very supportive. She's my best friend. We travel around the world together, super supportive. She gives me a hug. I drop in. She sees me run. She sees my takeoff for the double. And then she can't see the landing because of the mountain. But then she doesn't see me hit the next jump. She still doesn't see me hit the next jump. And she hears the radio crackle to life. We need all hands on deck and a helicopter on standby. Without a word, she looks at our coach. They put their skis on, she skis down. As she comes over the knoll, she sees me convulsing and thrashing, spewing blood. She gets closer and my eyes are rolled back in my head. In the blink of an instant, Jeannie encountered her largest unexpected trauma. I, at the same time, encountered my largest unexpected trauma, which is why after a lot of healing, and there's a lot that ties into that and different levels of healing. So I was in a coma. I had 8 spots of brain bleeding, and I was in a coma for 10 days. And then I had serious amnesia for 6 weeks, so no memory of that time. And then once my mind came back, I began to recognize what was happening, but still lots of inpatient therapy in the hospital and then outpatient therapy. So lots of steps. And then I began to realize that nobody can control what happens to them. Some people believe God controls that. Some people don't believe in a God. But you don't know why things happen to you. And you personally can't control that. But you can control your outcomes to everything that happens to you. So that's what I have learned and realized how to tie into and talk about is when you encounter an unexpected trauma, how do you build your own luck in the outcomes, opportunities that develop? And right now, the whole world is experiencing an unexpected trauma with COVID-19. The truth is, it has a lot of similarities with the brain injury in the fact that one day life seems like it's going up the mountain and then you get caught in a metaphorical avalanche. For my brain injury, that was the brain injury. This is COVID, but it slides you down. Some people are losing their jobs, they're losing their work, and kids can't go to school. Like my little sister is a freshman in college in California. Well, she was supposed to be a freshman in college in California.
Right.
She's up in Park City, Utah right now at my mom's house. She finished her spring semester. So she finished her freshman year. So she's now going into her sophomore year. But she's been up in Park City since March. And Park City is a great place to be, but she wishes she was at college.
Oh, yeah.
So there's lots of things that happen to people. But so that just is kind of my story and what I learned. And
very good. Thank you for sharing. I think we're going to have some great points to come out of here. 2 things that I want to mention real quick. One thing I actually loved from when you were, I think you said 6 years old, when you were really young, doing some amazing things, and you said out loud, I'm going to be a professional athlete and I'm going to combine gymnastics and skiing. So that principle I've found to be extremely powerful too, because I say that when we put something into words, that's the first step of creation. That's how you have a dream, and that's how you accomplish your dream. So I think that's super cool. And then your second principle that you already touched on was you had the physical injury, but you also mentioned your sister who watched and saw it. Well, she didn't see it happen, but anyway, she experienced it, right? Yeah. And her world was affected, and she had the quote unquote traumatic experience as well. And then you talked about school. So I think that's huge for people to realize where, yeah, maybe how we define trauma, we haven't gone through it. Maybe we haven't gone through a physical experience like that, a relationship, something like that. However, things happen to us, maybe related to our dreams. Maybe we want this job. We didn't get the job. Maybe we're in a job and we were laid off. Maybe we wanted to go to college and now we can't. Things happen. And just like you said, it affects us the very same way. So then I think you have some valuable things that you can teach us. If we're in a spot like that where our life is all shook up, right? We were going in the direction, climbing the mountain, boom, now we're at the bottom.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was interesting because I was a professional athlete and I was on the world tour competing, and then it was taken away from me. And I did not comprehend when I was first leaving the hospital that it was taken away from me to my competitive career permanently. And so I kind of associated my brain injury with a torn ACL. Lots of skiers tear their ACL all the time. I've done it a couple of times. And you take the year off and then you get back. And so I was like, I'll just take this year off and I'll heal and then I'll get back. But my brain injury had been so critical. I had to relearn everything. So I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to talk. I had to relearn how to ski. So I had to relearn with skiing every trick I had to relearn in the process. I never got back to learning all the tricks, but that first winter I was like relearning how to slide boxes and slide rails. And then there was one day when I was sliding just a flat box, which as a competitive skier is a very basic apparatus. It's just a box that's flat and it's about 4 feet wide. So it's pretty wide and easy to slide as a professional skier.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just sliding in, doing a front 270, which is the most basic trick that I learned how to do on a rail. And I landed and I tipped over and I just landed on my butt, but it just shook me. And I heard the doctor in the back of my mind saying, Jamie, you're cleared to do everything, but if you go back to skiing and you hit your head will respond to brain injuries much more intensely. And because of what happened to it, it will rattle your brain much more easily. And so I just had that happening in the back, like, you will cause permanent damages, probably. Like, nobody knows exactly for sure what will happen to the brain. So I appreciate that he didn't say exactly what, but he said, this is what's likely to happen. And I just had a moment where I was just sitting in the snow and I was like, I had so much support. My family was so supportive. And the world was. I had people from all over sending me support because I was a global figure. And if I damaged their support by returning to a level that I no longer could, that would crush me. Because if I hit my head and I developed permanent damages, my family would take care of me for the rest of their life, which means I knowingly would have put more trouble into their life. And at the time of my injury, they didn't know what I was going to turn into. So if I survived, they were happy. But if I had knowingly put at risk all the support that they had given me, that just I couldn't deal with. And then on the other side, I realized I love life. Like, there's so many things and I had so many new goals and passions, and like, there's so much you can do in life beyond what you thought was your identity, being a professional competitive skier. I was so lucky that I was able to continue skiing, but I could just have fun with my friends and family and enjoy life. And I really wanted to live life. But, and this has to do with mental health, at the time when I realized that skiing, I was not going to get back to my competitive days, and that I did have a lot of baggage that I was carrying. And I started thinking I was going to retire and that part of my life was over. I had huge mood swings and I would have all these triggers. And with a brain injury, your brain does get rattled. So that does affect the emotions. And then also, most people who've had all people who've had a brain injury, their life changes. Sometimes it gets back to a lot of similarity to what it was before. And my life is actually incredibly similar to how it was before. And I think I'm very fortunate, and it's a great life, which is why people say you're so lucky. But I did a lot to create that luck. But anyways, again, about the emotion, I would have all these triggers and these breakdowns and crying fests. And I actually started going to a psychotherapist. I went 3 days a week. And then I went once a week and every other week, which was a huge blessing, which is why when you said if I had guidance, my number one thing would be, if you're having turmoil, emotional trouble in your life, recognize it, don't feel bad about it, and get help. And sometimes the getting help is even just watching videos. It's listening to meditation mantras. It's writing in a journal, but do something to help it. So take some sort of action and recognize that it's not a problem that you have these feelings.
100%. I love it. Something I wanted to bring up was this idea of confidence. So follow me for a second and we'll get back to exactly what you said. Sometimes it's interesting how we can feel a lack of confidence. If we look to the future, we can say, oh, this is what I want to do, but I haven't done it yet. And so now I'm a terrible person. Or we can look to the past and say, oh, I did it in the past, but I'm not doing it now. Or, oh, I've made so many mistakes in the past. Now I can never be a success. Therefore, two sources of lack of confidence. So the reason I brought that up is because that may have gone through your mind when you had done amazing, amazing things, and now you're in a spot where you had to relearn it. So you could have had those thoughts go through your head and you say, you know what, I was something, but now I'm not. And to the future sense, it could be, hey, all these people are writing me such awesome letters and they're supporting me. And I feel like I should and could and would love to um, be somebody for them. I would love to get back to exactly where I was for them, but I'm not. So a lot of those types of thoughts could have gone through your head to the point of, oh my goodness, terrible, 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 you know, thoughts of depression, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And so I've learned a lot about the importance of how our thoughts influence our emotions, which influence our action and everything else, and our beliefs, right? So did you learn anything through this process? And I love how you say controlled luck and habits that you learn. So what kind of things did you learn as far as your thoughts went to say, yeah, my past was my past, my future hasn't been written yet. How do I take control of where I am today?
Yeah, and I did have a lot of those thoughts, comparing myself to the past or who I wanted to be in the future or wanted to go. And I think it's really important to focus on loving your current self and your current
Mm-hmm.
journey. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the ways to do that is to view the struggles with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So pivot your mindset a little bit when you're encountering struggles. And instead of saying, okay, these deficits, like let's go back to my brain injury when I couldn't walk up the stairs because my body was not capable to walk up the stairs. Instead of thinking, okay, they're permanent, I'm just stuck, I just worked on setting little attainable goals. And attainable goals are goals you can accomplish the next day or the day you set them. You can accomplish those goals. They're not your growth goals that are far in the future and they might seem a little overwhelming and like a long strides to get there. They're little goals that you can accomplish. And so I set a goal to walk up the stairs. And so I just practiced every day beyond my like physical therapy in the hospital. I was in the hospital and I would just practice. And my sister would actually hold my gait belt, which is like a leash for a human. It's like a little leash for a human. So, because I couldn't walk independently. But so she would hold it and I would walk up and we would just keep practicing. And then I graduated from the gait belt and so I could run up the stairs by myself and I just kept practicing. And so by the time I left the hospital, I could run up the stairs in 3 minutes and 23 seconds. And I know that because I timed myself.
Nice.
But I got really, I had that competitive gene, but then I kept setting those attainable goals. So if at that time, I just focused on the fact I was learning how to run upstairs. This is a girl who less than like a couple months before that was doing double flips and traveling the world as a professional athlete. If I had focused on what a huge slide it had been to be working on walking upstairs, or if I had focused on the fact that I wanted to get back to skiing at that time, I still thought I was going to get back maybe to competitive skiing, but I didn't focus on that. I really focused on what I could control and those
Mm-hmm.
small goals so I could take steps and there'd be days when I'd start to think about the past and I'd have to shut my mind off. I'd actually have to be like, nope, not thinking about that. Think about what I can do tomorrow and like get
Right.
back to like thinking about what I can accomplish. So that's one of the biggest pivot points is to look at things with a growth mindset. And then once you have decided you're going to start climbing, set attainable goals so you can take little steps and then you have no idea how far you're going to go with those little steps.
Absolutely. That's such a good principle. Something that I focus on as a coach is exactly what you said, where we all have some sort of large vision, large goal, kind of like you said, the growth goal. But sometimes we get so overwhelmed with that to say, oh, I'm not at the top of the mountain yet. I'm not back to being a skier. I'm not back to this. And because of that perceived gap, then we stop and don't do anything. But I love
Right.
what you said about saying, what can I do now? What can I do today? And because the principle is, how does a professional get to where they are? How does anybody at the top get to where they are? Same way all of us do, step by step, right?
Yeah.
It's just that for whatever reason, our brains sometimes don't like to focus on those step by steps. We try to skip it. With the
Yeah.
professionals, the difference is maybe we don't always hear about the step-by-steps, the what's the word? The not so glamorous steps,
Right.
right? But for
And
all of us, it's the day-to-day, what can we do?
yeah, and even if you hear about it, like there's all these things on the internet now that's like J.K. Rowling was a broke 20-year-old, like, and Oprah Winfrey in her 20s was fired from her first job. Like
Hmm.
there's like these things that like get tossed around, but seeing it and experiencing it is completely different. So like you can read it, but when you are 20 and you're fired from your first job and you feel crushed and overwhelmed and you have these goals but you don't see any way to get there, any path, it can be so hard because when you're successful and you're looking back at your past, you're like, oh, these are all like, it's so easy to see the path. But when you're in the process of the path, it's so difficult. And that's part of the overwhelming factor of thinking about growth goals, which is why it's good to just set little goals you can accomplish, because when you're looking in the future, it, even if you believe it, it just seems so far away, and the gap can make it so, like you mentioned, you don't even take the first step. And to become a professional in anything, you have to take the first step, which is why I actually had the professional skiing career. I took the steps, I created a professional career for myself, and then it was ripped away from me. So then all of a sudden I had to restart and start over, and heal my body, heal my mind, and then start taking steps for creating my speaking career. And it's interesting because I think there's some benefits and some downfall. Like it's been hard. It's been a lot of work. That same idea of the steps I took before, like everything you don't see. Like there's
Hmm.
hours and hours of work that you're never gonna see. And then there's also some benefits of some changes. Like when I was getting into my skiing career, I was going through my teenage years and I kind of changed my identity to fit what I thought was supposed to be the brand, of who I thought I was supposed to be. And it wasn't authentic and it wasn't genuine. And now that's something that people have been pointing out. Like I was on a call with my agent this morning and she was like, I love how authentic you are. Like that's the only reason we want to work with you is because you're so authentic, basically. And
Uh-huh.
I was saying that's a new thing that I've developed. And so this time around, when I'm building my speaking career, just like having the talk with you, being more vulnerable and more open and not trying to fit what other people want. And that's something that's really common, especially with like the social media and things like that. You want to fit, like you want to edit the picture correctly, you want to fit the image that other people want you to be instead of just being who you are,
Exactly.
which can be a big struggle that a lot of people have.
Right. I love that. We've talked about some super cool things. I want to summarize one thing where I like to compare the physical health to the emotional health because they're very similar and we should treat them very similarly as far as how we heal them, right? So, with your physical injury, you did have to spend the necessary time in the hospital, in the inpatient and outpatient, how you said, so that you could heal properly. And you're doing very well today, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because you took the necessary time to do what was necessary. So, with our emotional health too, which is very much a partner with physical health, like we said, with what you went through, there were a lot of thoughts that went through your mind. You probably had the emotions of fear, anxiety, depression, uncertainty, and at times happiness because you say, hey, I'm going to get there, right? You have all these variety of emotions. And like we've been talking about, we all have to be okay with our own present, our own journey, and realize that part of that journey, we're going to have emotions. And as we do it, we shouldn't be afraid of them. We shouldn't be upset that we have them. We shouldn't think, well, shoot, nobody else has these, so there must be wrong with me, something wrong with me. But no, we say, hey, fear, anxiety, these things, okay, so what do they mean? How has somebody else gotten through them? And what's most important is that we always remember that we have power over our emotions because we control our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, where you choose what to focus on, no, I'm going to focus on what I can do today, the little thing I can do today. If it's one step, one piece, one whatever, this is what I'm going to do. And that's huge to our healing and our overcoming what we went through.
Yeah. And then with your focus on what you want to create, those little things you take develop into habits. So if you create positive habits that you want to live with. You can also create negative habits, which is why I was actually at a neuro conference this past fall, and there were some really intelligent neuroscientists from around the world, and they were talking about how with neuroplasticity, which says the belief, like neuroplasticity states that you can create new synaptic connections in your brain, which are the brain pathways, at any time in your life. Anybody can do it. And so the focus has been on the positive ones. You can always create positive ones. If you make these choices and then build them into habits, you actually are restructuring your brain pathways in your brain to make yourself more efficient and able to accomplish things that you want to accomplish. And then on the reverse side, you can also establish negative neuroplasticity. So that's happening to a lot of people with COVID right now. They're like stuck at home, and so they're like, okay, we're just going to watch TV every day and we're just going to be there. Like, no, like I'm not against like ever watching TV. I like to watch Friends and stuff. Like if you're just feeling like there's no opportunities and so you're just stable and stuck, that's actually causing harm and making your brain into bad habits, instead of if you do things like, I don't know, repaint your house, or like part of it, or your flower garden, or go have fun walking your dog, or actually enjoy the time you have with your kid because they're home from school and you haven't realized that you haven't spent this much time with them. But maybe make some sports or something like random, but actually using the time productively, you'll just feel a lot better about it. But that's a big thing with COVID, is that your choices that you're making right now are building the habits that are changing your brain and will create the luck as it starts to settle down. Like COVID, I think, will cause some permanent damage, some permanent changes. But then we'll get back to more of like human form that we are used to, and jobs will continue and things will continue structuring. So when we get back to that, there'll be people who used this and they're skyrocketing, and you're like, oh, how did they do that? And it's because of the steps they took during COVID.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Way to bring it back around. So whatever we go through, we have the power in ourselves to choose our thoughts, control our emotions, and control our luck by our habits. Very good. Well, Jamie, this has been a fantastic conversation. We appreciate what we've learned from you. How can people connect with you on social media?
Thank you. Well, on social media, my Instagram is Jamie MoCrazy, and I'm doing some like live 5 minutes at 5:00, just random talks, and doing some videos and some pictures. It's an entertaining site. If you want to fill up your time. And then on Facebook, Jamie MoCrazy, and I post links to events that I'm attending and things like that. And then, so those are the main social media sites that I use, Instagram and Facebook. And I have a website, jamiemocrazy.com, which is my speaking website. And I also have a website that I share with my sister called mocrazystrong.com. And that's about the MoCrazy sisters, the MoCrazy girls. And it shares a bit about what we're up to. And then also you can email me at mocrazystrong@gmail.com. That's my business email. If you have any questions, or if you have any suggestions or connections or anything like that, I'm very open to people reaching out about random things, or if you have connections to events or something like that, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thank you again, Jamie. Thank you for joining this podcast. And for everybody, this has been another episode of the Champions of Self Visual Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Virtual hug.